The ballroom glittered, but for one girl, it was a prison. She moved through the shadows, a ghost in a borrowed maid's uniform, her eyes on the exit. One more step, and she'd be free. Until a voice like splintering ice cut through the music. "Going somewhere?" She froze. He stood before her, Alistair Vane, the Duke of Ashington, a man so cold they said his heart was carved from granite. She had slipped toward the doors unseen, but the coldest duke in England had just blocked her way, and he never let anything go. The thrum of the waltz vibrated through the soles of the thin, worn-out shoes Serafina wore. They were not her own. Nothing she had on was her own, from the scratchy, ill-fitting black bombazine dress to the stark white maid's cap that pressed painfully against her temples, hiding her strawberry blonde hair. She was a shadow in the grandest ballroom in London. The Duke of Ashington's Mayfair residence was a palace of light, spilling music and champagne. Inside, diamonds glittered, and champagne flowed from fountains. It was the event of the season, and Serafina March, daughter of the disgraced and imprisoned Viscount Rivington, was hiding in plain sight. She kept her head down, a silver tray of empty glasses balanced precariously in her hands, hands that were raw and red from lye soap, but that had, just 6 months ago, known only silk gloves and piano keys. Her target wasn't the ballroom, it was the study. For 3 weeks, she had worked as a scullery maid, then a housemaid, enduring the tyranny of the housekeeper, Mrs. Croft. All of it was for one purpose: the Duke's study. Specifically, the black lacquer desk where he conducted his vast empire. Somewhere in that desk, or in the safe behind a portrait, was a ledger. It was the only copy of the investment ledger from the East India shipping venture that had ruined her father. Her father, Lord Rivington, had trusted his partner, the smooth-talking, universally adored Lord Ellington. But Ellington had falsified the books, declared the venture a catastrophic loss, and walked away clean, leaving Rivington to face debtor's prison. Serafina's father was dying in Newgate. And Lord Ellington? He was here tonight, sipping the Duke of Ashington's champagne, a trusted friend of the host. She had her chance. The ball was at its peak. The Duke, a notorious recluse who rarely hosted, was trapped by social obligation. The study would be empty. She slipped from the main ballroom, using the servants' corridor. She reached the study. The door was unlocked, her heart hammered. The room was dark, smelling of old leather and expensive tobacco. Moonlight streamed through the tall French windows, illuminating the massive desk. She didn't dare light a lamp. She moved to the desk, her fingers searching the drawers. They were all locked. Of course, she moved to the painting, a grim-faced ancestor. She knew from gossip below stairs that the safe was here. Her fingers traced the heavy gilt frame. A small click. The painting swung open. The safe was modern, a black iron box with a combination dial. She let out a frustrated sob. She didn't have the code. "No, no," she whispered, frantic. Wait, a keyhole. A small secondary keyhole below the dial. She didn't have the key, but she had seen a key, on the Duke's watch fob. Failure. Complete and utter. She had to leave. She had been gone too long. Mrs. Croft would have her hide. She couldn't risk being dismissed. She would find another way. She smoothed the painting back into place, checked the desk, and erased any sign of her presence. She pulled the door open a crack. The hallway was empty. She slipped out, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She moved quickly along the corridor, back toward the noise and light. She just wanted to disappear into the kitchens. She reached the arched entrance to the main hall, concealed by a heavy velvet curtain. She peered through. Guests were mingling. She saw Lord Ellington moving toward the card room. Now was her chance to cross the hall unnoticed. She slipped toward the main doors, not to leave, but to gain the servants' staircase just beyond them. Her head was down, her body angled away from the light. Unseen. A solid wall of black wool blocked her path. She walked directly into it, the impact jarring the empty tray from her hands. It clattered to the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo into a sudden, terrible silence. Going somewhere. The voice was not loud, but it was deep, resonant, and colder than the January wind. Seraphina's blood turned to ice. She raised her head, slowly. He wasn't a wall. He was a man, but he might as well have been carved from granite. Alistair Vane, the 12th Duke of Ashington, stared down at her. He was impossibly tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in immaculate black. His face was a masterpiece of aristocratic disdain, all sharp angles, a strong jaw, and a mouth that looked like it had never formed a smile. But it was his eyes that held her. They were the color of a winter storm, a pale, piercing grey, and they were dissecting her. He wasn't in the ballroom, he wasn't dancing, he was here, and he had seen her. I was just retrieving this, Your Grace, Seraphina stammered, bending to pick up the tray, her face flaming. Were you? His voice was silk over steel. He didn't move. He simply watched. You were moving with considerable haste, away from the ballroom, and you came from the direction of my private wing. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I was lost, Your Grace. It's a large house. It is, he agreed, his voice dangerously soft. And yet the servants I employ generally know their way. You, however, are new. He knew. This man, who supposedly cared for nothing, noticed a new, lowly housemaid. I apologize, Your Grace. I will return to the kitchens. She tried to sidestep him. His arm shot out, not touching her, but blocking her path. The ballroom music swelled, a mockery of her predicament. You will stay precisely where you are. He tilted his head. Look at me. It was a command. Reluctantly, she met his gaze. The force of it was physical, pinning her to the spot. Your hands, he said, his voice dropping. Your Grace. Your hands. Show me. Trembling, she held them out, palms up. They were red, chapped, with a broken nail. And yet, he whispered, his gaze flickering to her face, you have the bone structure of a march, and the eyes of Lady Rivington. Seraphina's heart stopped. A pity about her father, Viscount Rivington, the Duke continued, his voice a glacial murmur. A fool who trusted the wrong man. Now why? He leaned in, his clean scent of sandalwood and winter air overwhelming her, is his daughter, Lady Seraphina March, masquerading as a housemaid in my home. The world tilted. The music of the waltz seemed to fade into a distant, roaring sound. He knew. I don't know what you mean, she whispered, her voice barely a thread. It was the weakest defense, and it died in the air between them. The Duke's lips thinned. Do not, he said, his voice lethally quiet. Compound your error by treating me as a fool. I have been watching you for a week, Lady Seraphina. Ever since I saw you arguing with Mrs. Croft about the quality of the silver polish. You spoke of chemical abrasion. The average housemaid worries about elbow grease. He had been watching her. The thought sent a chill down her spine. He hadn't been in the ballroom. He'd been on the minstrels' gallery above, observing. You have 10 seconds to provide me with a reason not to have you arrested for trespassing and, I assume, attempted theft, he stated. He was not angry. He was calculating. It was far more terrifying. Please, she begged. It's not what you think. I wasn't stealing. I was looking. For? She couldn't say. Not here. Her eyes darted toward the card room. The Duke's gaze followed hers. He saw Lord Ellington through the doorway, laughing. Alistair Vane's expression didn't change, but something new flickered in those grey eyes. Understanding. "I see," he said. He looked back at her. "You believe Ellington is responsible for your father's ruin." "He is responsible," she hissed, her desperation making her bold. "He framed him. He built a house of cards and left my father to be crushed. The proof is in a ledger I believed was in your study." "And was it?" She deflated. "No. The safe. I couldn't open it." "Of course you couldn't," he said. Guests were beginning to notice their host's intense, private conversation with a mere maid. "My study," the Duke said, his voice now a neutral, commanding tone, "is not the place for this discussion." He placed a hand on the small of her back. The gesture looked polite, but to Seraphina, the pressure was unyielding. It was a brand of cold, powerful possession. He steered her not toward the kitchens, but back down the dark corridor she had just fled. He walked her to a small, unassuming door, hidden by a tapestry. He opened it, revealing a narrow, spiral staircase. "Up!" he commanded. They ascended in silence. He led her to the third floor, to an isolated wing. He stopped at a door, produced a key, and opened it. He nudged her inside. It was a sitting room, furnished but covered in dust sheets. It was cold. "Tomorrow," the Duke said from the doorway, "you will be given new attire. You are no longer Sarah, the housemaid." Seraphina's heart leapt. Hope. Was he going to help her? "You will be Miss Seraphina Vance," he continued, dashing that hope. "My distant, impoverished cousin from the north. You will act as a companion to my sister, Lady Alara. She arrives tomorrow." Seraphina stared at him, bewildered. "Companion? Why? Why are you doing this?" "Because," the Duke said, stepping into the room and closing the door, "your presence in my house, in your current role, is a liability. Your accusations against Lord Ellington, whether true or false, are dangerous. If he recognized you, he might take steps to silence you. That would be messy. In my home. You're protecting me?" He gave a short, sharp laugh, devoid of all humor. "I am protecting my house, Lady Seraphina. I am protecting the order of my affairs. You have become a chaotic, unpredictable variable. I intend to make you predictable." "By making me a prisoner?" she cried. "By making you visible," he corrected, his voice sharp. "As a housemaid, you are a ghost. As my cousin, you are a person. You will be watched. By me, by my staff, and most importantly, by Lord Ellington. If you are what you say, an innocent woman seeking justice, he will be unsettled. If you are not—" He left the threat hanging. "This is a cage," she whispered, backing away. "It is a gilded one. Far better than Newgate Prison. Wouldn't you agree?" The casual mention of her father's fate was a deliberate, cruel strike. "You will have clothes, food, and warmth. You will not go near my study. You will not attempt to flee. And you will not, under any circumstances, breathe a word of your theories about Lord Ellington to anyone, especially not my sister." It was blackmail. He was holding her identity, and by extension, her father's last shred of honor, hostage. "What do you get from this?" she demanded, finding a sliver of her old self. His grey eyes seemed to glitter in the moonlight. "Intrigue. It has been a dull season." He paused, his expression becoming colder. "Lord Ellington is my financial advisor. He controls a significant portion of my assets. Your claims, if true, would mean he is a traitor. If false, you are a spy, sent by a rival to discredit him. I am telling the truth. I have no evidence of that. I only have the word of a woman who lied her way into my home." He moved to the door. You will be brought a meal. Your new life begins tomorrow, Miss Vance." He opened the door. "Oh, and one more thing." He looked back. "The key you saw on my watch fob, it opens my cigar humidor. The safe in my study has not been opened by a key in 50 years. It is tied to a biometric measure. My fingerprint. If you had somehow managed to open it, the Bow Street runners would be here. Not me." He closed the door, and Serafina heard the heavy metallic click of the key turning in the lock. She was a prisoner, locked in a dusty room by the coldest duke in England. The next morning, the cage was gilded. Mrs. Croft, her face a mask of pinched fury, arrived with 2 maids. They carried not uniforms, but 3 modest, respectable day dresses, along with fresh linens and shoes that fit. "His Grace has reassigned you," Mrs. Croft sniffed. "You are to be companion to Lady Alara. You will report to her. But make no mistake, girl," she spat. "I know what you are, and I will be watching." Serafina merely nodded. She was Miss Serafina Vance, a poor relation. She had to look the part. Lady Alara Vane arrived that afternoon, like a whirlwind of silk and breathless chatter. She was everything her brother was not: warm, vibrant, and utterly transparent. She was barely 18, fresh from a convent school, and thrilled to be in London for her first season. "Oh, Miss Vance, you are a godsend," Alara gushed, grabbing Serafina's hands. "Alistair is so dreadfully dull. He said I needed a companion to ensure I don't, and I quote, make a public spectacle of myself. Isn't that dreadful? But you look lovely. Oh dear, was I not supposed to say that?" "I am grateful for the position, Lady Alara," Serafina said. "Oh, call me Alara. We shall be the dearest of friends. You must tell me everything about London." Serafina found herself smiling. The girl's innocence was a balm, but it was also a weapon the Duke was using. By pairing her with his fragile, naive sister, he was ensuring Serafina would be on her best behavior. For the next week, Serafina lived a strange half-life. By day, she walked with Alara, read poetry, and practiced the pianoforte. By night, she returned to her locked room. The Duke was rarely seen. He was a presence, a weight in the house, but he remained in his study, a spider in the center of his web. And then he came to call. They were in the morning room when the butler, Phineas, announced him. "Lord Ellington, Your Grace." Serafina's blood ran cold. Her hands, resting on the piano keys, clenched into fists. "Ah, Alistair, and dear Lady Alara, you are a vision," Lord Ellington boomed, his voice radiating false warmth. He was a handsome man in his late 50s, with a charismatic smile and eyes that crinkled with supposed kindness. He was the vulture who had picked her father's life apart. He bowed over Alara's hand. "Alistair, you have been hoarding your treasure. She will be the queen of the season." "You flatter me, Lord Ellington." Alara blushed. "I never flatter." His gaze then slid to Serafina. "And who is this?" "This," the Duke of Ashington said, his voice a cool, flat plain from the doorway, "is Miss Serafina Vance, my cousin. She is acting as Alara's companion." Ellington's smile didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. He bowed to Serafina. "Miss Vance, a pleasure. Any relation to the Vanes of Northumberland?" "A distant branch, my lord," Serafina murmured, keeping her eyes lowered. She could not meet his gaze, for fear he would see the hatred burning there. "Ah, well, welcome to London." He turned his back on her, a complete dismissal. "Alistair, my dear boy, I have splendid news. The consortium for the American railways. It's a done deal. The returns will be staggering." "Indeed," the Duke said. He was watching, not Ellington. He was watching Serafina. "I just need your signature on the final transfer," Ellington continued, pulling papers from his satchel. "We'll make you richer than Croesus." "Perhaps we should discuss this in my study," the Duke said. "Nonsense. We are all friends here." Ellington spread the papers on the tea table. "See? Right here. Your signature. And the Bank of England will release the funds." Serafina's eyes scanned the document. She saw the familiar logo of a bank, Baring Brothers. But something was wrong. The crest. "That," Serafina said, her voice small. Everyone turned. "Pardon, Miss Vance," Ellington said, his smile tightening. "That is not the correct crest for Baring Brothers." Silence. Thick, heavy, and immediate. "What an extraordinarily specific observation, Miss Vance," Ellington said, his voice losing its warmth. "Are you an expert in banking heraldry?" My father was a banker," Serafina lied, her mind racing. "A very minor one. He taught me to notice details. The lion on the Baring crest should be facing Dexter, to the right. That one is facing Sinister, to the left." Lord Ellington let out a short, sharp laugh. "My dear girl, what a vivid imagination. This is the standard letterhead, I assure you." "She is correct." The words, spoken by the Duke, dropped into the room like chips of ice. Ellington froze. "I beg your pardon." Alistair Vane walked into the room. He did not look at the papers. He looked at Serafina. "She is correct. I had an account with Barings as a young man. The lion faces right, not left." He turned his glacial gaze on Lord Ellington. Ellington, for the first time, looked flustered. He quickly gathered the papers. "Well, good heavens, a printing error. How embarrassing. These printers, they are all incompetent. I shall have it rectified at once. A simple clerical error." "Of course," the Duke said, his voice unreadable. I shall return this afternoon with the corrected documents." Ellington backed away, bowing. "Lady Alara, Miss Vance." He gave Serafina a look, a quick, sharp, assessing glance that held a new, chilling menace. He knew she was not a simple companion. He fled the room. Alara, oblivious, giggled. "How exciting! You saved Alistair from a printing error, Miss Vance. You are clever." Serafina's hands were shaking so badly she hid them in the folds of her skirt. The Duke of Ashington stood at the window, watching Ellington's carriage pull away. "Alara," he said, not turning. "Leave us." "But Alistair—" "Now." His voice was absolute. Alara hurried from the room. The door clicked shut. Serafina was alone with him. "You are a terrible liar, Miss Vance," he said to the window. I don't—" "Your father was a viscount, not a banker." He turned. His face was pale, his eyes burning with a cold fire. "You saw that document from 20 feet away. You identified a flaw that my own lawyers, the best in England, missed. You were not looking for a ledger in my study, were you?" "I was." "You were," he agreed, "but not just any ledger. You were looking for evidence of forgery, because you already knew he was a forger. You," the Duke said, taking a step toward her, "have just made yourself an exceptionally dangerous enemy. Lord Ellington is not a man who tolerates clever companions." "He is robbing you," Serafina cried. "That was a forgery. He's creating a fake venture, moving your money into an account he controls. That's what he did to my father. And by revealing your hand, you have shown him your cards," the Duke countered, his voice lashing out. "He now knows you are not a simple girl. He will investigate. He will find out you are Lady Serafina March, and when he does, he will have you eliminated." "Then help me," she pleaded. "You see the truth. We can go to the magistrate." "With what?" he scoffed. A printing error? A story from a disgraced Viscount's daughter? Ellington is the establishment. He dines with the Prime Minister. You have no proof. You have only an allegation. And you have just warned him that we are on to him. We, she repeated, latching on to the word. Alistair Vane's jaw tightened. He truly looked at her, and she saw something new in his expression, a deep, profound, and ancient weariness. Yes, Lady Seraphina, he said, his voice ragged. We. Because you, in your noble, reckless, and idiotic attempt at justice, have just tied my fortunes to yours. If he is robbing me, I am on the verge of ruin. And if he's willing to forge documents, he is willing to kill. And you have just painted a target on both of our backs. The silence that followed his declaration was heavier than the London fog. Seraphina sank onto the piano bench. Ruin, she whispered. But you are the Duke of Ashington. You are the wealthiest man in England. Am I? He countered. He walked to the fireplace, his back to her. My father was a gambler. My grandfather was a fool. I inherited a title, a string of crumbling estates, and a mountain of debt. I have spent the last 10 years, Lady Seraphina, since I was 21, clawing this family back from the brink. He turned, and the mask was gone. The Coldest Duke was a facade, and beneath it was a man burning with a quiet, desperate intensity. I am not a recluse because I hate society, he said, his voice low and raw. I am a recluse because I am working, every day, every night. I don't attend balls, I balance books, and 4 years ago, I was vulnerable. I needed a massive influx of capital to save Ravenswood, my ancestral home. Lord Ellington provided it. Seraphina's eyes widened. He loaned you money? No. He managed it. He brought me opportunities, investments, ventures, like the one you saw today. He became my financial advisor. He has, for 4 years, had total control over my portfolio. He took my remaining assets, and he claimed tripled them. He saved my family name. And in return, Seraphina finished, the horror dawning, he now has his hooks in you so deep you cannot pull them out. He has my trust, Alistair corrected, his voice hardening again. Or he had it. Until a very clever, very desperate young woman broke into my house and started asking questions I had, subconsciously, been avoiding. He began to pace. I had doubts. For months. Small things. Returns that were too good. Reports that were too clean. But I was grateful. He saved me. To question him would be to question the very foundation of my success. And now, he said, stopping directly in front of her, you have confirmed it. A printing error is one thing. But the look in his eyes when you pointed it out, that was not the look of a man embarrassed. That was the look of a man caught. He was closer than he had ever been. She could see the fatigue around his eyes, the tiny scar that nicked his left eyebrow. He was not granite. He was human. Why me? She asked. Why, Miss Vance? Why not just throw me out? Because, he said, his voice dropping, when I first saw you, I thought you were one of his. I thought you were a spy he'd planted in my house, so I kept you close. I made you a companion to Ilara to see how you would react. You thought I was working for him. It made more sense than the truth, Alistair said with a wry, bitter smile. But then I watched you. You never sent any letters. You never met anyone in secret. You just endured. And you watched him. At the ball, I saw you look at him. It wasn't spycraft. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. And then, today, you confirmed it. You are not his spy. You are his nemesis. A strange, dizzying sense of vindication washed over her. He believed her. After months of being called a liar, the Duke of Ashington believed her. "So what do we do?" she asked. Her voice was stronger. Alistair looked at her, his analytical gaze returning. "We do. Nothing. Not yet. Nothing. But he'll get away. He thinks I'll sign his corrected document. I will delay. I will have a sudden illness. Meanwhile, you and I, we will find the proof. You were right about the ledger. It exists. It has to. He would have destroyed it. Not Ellington. He's too arrogant. He thinks himself untouchable. He wouldn't destroy proof of his greatest triumph. He would hide it. A trophy." Alistair's eyes lit up with a cold, predatory gleam. "And I know exactly where he would keep it." "Where?" "Not here, at his country estate, Thornfield, a place he believes no one can touch." "Then we must go there." "We cannot. It's fortified, and he is on his guard. He will be watching us both." Alistair ran a hand through his dark hair. "He will be watching me," Seraphina corrected. "He will be watching Miss Vance. He thinks I am a clever companion. He does not yet know I am Lady Seraphina March. He will try to remove me." "I will not let him," Alistair said, the words a possessive, guttural vow. "You won't have to," Seraphina said, standing. An idea, wild and perilous, was forming. "You said I am a variable. Let's be unpredictable. He expects me to be your companion. But you have a sister." "Elara?" "Elara," Seraphina confirmed. "She needs to be presented. What better way to distract the Tun and Lord Ellington than to throw the most lavish, most talked-about ball of the season? A ball to formally introduce Lady Elara Vane." Alistair stared at her. "A ball? You want to host a party? We are on the verge of ruin and you want to spend thousands on champagne and fiddlers." "Yes," Seraphina said, her eyes bright. "Because Ellington will have to come. It would be an insult if he didn't. He will be here, in your home, smiling, and his own estate Thornfield will be empty. You want me to leave my own ball? To rob my financial advisor?" The audacity of it almost made him smile. "No," Seraphina said, her own smile thin and sharp. "You are the host. You cannot be seen to leave. You will be here, dancing with your sister, solidifying your place in society, showing Ellington that you suspect nothing." "Then who? Me?" Seraphina said. "I am just a companion. If I fall ill, a migraine, and retire for the evening, who will notice? I will go to Thornfield. I will find that ledger. I know his handwriting. I know the accounts. I will find the proof you need." Alistair Vane looked at her for a long, unbearable moment. He saw not a frightened girl, but a warrior. "It's madness," he breathed. "You'll be caught. You'll be shot." "It's the only way," she countered. "You said it yourself. He's a vulture. The only way to catch a vulture is to bait the trap with what he wants most, and then rob his nest while he's feeding. And what does he want most? You," Seraphina said simply. "Your money, your name, your complete and utter trust. And this ball will be the ultimate display of it. We will call it the Solstice Ball, the darkest night of the year, just before the return of the light." Alistair felt a tremor of something he hadn't felt in a decade, admiration, and it terrified him. "Alistair," she said, using his name for the first time. "Trust me, I can do this. I must do this, for my father, and for your future." He reached out, his fingers hovering near her cheek. "If you are caught, Seraphina, I cannot save you." "Then I," she said, meeting his gaze without flinching, "shall have to be extremely careful." The next 2 weeks were a blur of controlled chaos, Ashington House was transformed. Seraphina, in her role as Miss Vance, was the perfect cover. She and Elara were suddenly, conspicuously everywhere, ordering fabrics and flowers. Lord Ellington, as predicted, was a constant, smiling presence. He had, of course, produced the corrected documents. The Duke, feigning a lingering malaise, had signed them. Seraphina had watched, her heart in her throat. Alistair had caught her eye and given a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of his head. Patience. Ellington believed he had won. He saw Seraphina as a minor hurdle. He treated her with a cloying, paternalistic kindness that made her skin crawl. "My dear Miss Vance, you must allow me to advise you," he'd said, catching them in the park. "A girl with your tenuous position must be careful. Making observations about your betters is not the way to secure a future." It was a veiled threat. Seraphina had merely smiled. "Thank you, my lord. I shall treasure your advice." Meanwhile, Alistair worked in the shadows. He used his network of informants, the carriage drivers, the grooms, the footmen, to gather intelligence. He secured floor plans for Thornfield. He learned the head groom was a drunkard and the housekeeper was deaf. "The vault," Alistair told Seraphina late one night in one of their brief, whispered meetings. "It's in his library, behind a false wall of books. Dante's Inferno. How do I open it?" "You don't." He handed her a small, heavy skeleton key. "This won't open the vault, but it will open the desk in his private study. Ellington is meticulous. He keeps a daily journal. If the ledgers are in the vault, the combination will be in that journal. You have 2 hours." "And how do I get to Thornfield?" "My fastest horse, Midnight, will be waiting for you, saddled at the mews 2 streets over. My most trusted groom, a man named Thomas, will have her ready. He will ride with you. He is capable." The implication was clear. Thomas was not just a groom. He was a bodyguard. The night of the solstice ball arrived. Ashington House was ablaze with light. It was a staggering success. The Coldest Duke was back. Seraphina, in a simple but elegant gown of pale green, a colour Alistair had remarked, suited her, played her part. She was the quiet, efficient companion, steering Elara, radiant in white and diamonds, away from fortune-hunting bores. Lord Ellington was in his element, the Duke's right hand, accepting congratulations on his financial acumen. At 11 o'clock, the Duke led his sister out for her first waltz. As they danced, Alistair's eyes scanned the crowd. He found Seraphina near the French doors. He met her gaze. He nodded. It was time. Seraphina slipped a hand to her temple, feigning a sudden pain. She whispered to Elara, "Your sisterly duty, Lady Elara. My head, it's splitting. Oh, poor Sarah. Go, go! Lie down at once!" Seraphina smiled, curtsied, and moved toward the servants' corridor. Once she was out of sight, she flew. She had a dark grey, divided riding habit stashed in the laundry room. She changed in seconds, bundling her green dress. She slipped out the tradesman's entrance. Thomas was waiting in the alley. "Miss." He was a short, wiry man with the broken nose of a boxer. He tossed her up onto the saddle of the black mare. Midnight was trembling with restrained energy. "Thornfield is 10 miles, Thomas said. "We ride now." They rode. They flew through the dark, sleeping streets, the horses' hooves muffled on the damp cobblestones. They hit the countryside, and Thomas set a grueling, reckless pace. Seraphina, who had been riding since she could walk, stayed with him. The wind ripped the pins from her hair, and her strawberry blonde hair flew behind her. She felt, for the first time in months, utterly and terrifyingly alive. They reached Thornfield in under an hour. It was dark, a fortress. Kitchen window, Thomas grunted. I'll handle the dogs. He vanished. Serafina moved to the back of the house. The kitchen window, with its faulty latch, opened with a small pop. She slithered inside. The house was silent. She moved by memory, following the floor plan Alistair had forced her to memorize. Up the back stairs, to the library. It was a massive 2-story room, and there, on the far wall, was a shelf of red leather-bound books. Dante. She ran to the desk. The skeleton key worked. The lock clicked. She pulled open the top drawer. It was there, a small, black, leather-bound journal. Her fingers, numb with haste, fumbled. She opened it. Ellington's spidery, arrogant script. And there, an entry from last week. Baring Brothers. New account. 1845 or 12. A combination. 1845 to 12. She ran to the bookshelf. She pulled on Dante's Inferno. Nothing. Purgatorio. Paradiso. She pulled on the spine of Inferno again. Harder. A low, grinding sound. The entire bookcase swung silently inward. A vault. A black iron door. A combination dial. Her hands were shaking. 18. Right. 45. Left. 12. Right. The handle turned. She pulled. The vault was deep, and it was filled. Not with gold, but with ledgers. Dozens of them. Each one meticulously labelled. The Duchess of Sutherland. The Marquess of Bath. And there, at the bottom, a simple, dark blue ledger. Rivington Shipping Venture. Her father's name. She grabbed it. She pulled it open. And there it was. The truth. The 2 sets of books. The real profits. And the faked losses. The signature of Lord Ellington, transferring the lost funds to a private account in Switzerland. She had it. She had him. I wouldn't be so sure, Lady Serafina. The voice came from the doorway of the library. Serafina dropped the ledger. It hit the floor with a sickening thud. Lord Ellington stood there. He was not at the ball. He was here, and he was holding a pistol, aimed directly at her heart. What a predictable, foolish little girl you are, he sneered, advancing into the room. Did you really think that printing error was a mistake? It was a test, Ellington said, his voice dripping with condescending amusement. He walked past her, into the vault, and picked up the Rivington ledger. A test, and you failed spectacularly. Serafina was paralyzed. The ball. A lovely diversion, he agreed. But you forget, my dear. I know Alistair Vane. He loathes parties. The idea that he would suddenly throw the most expensive ball of the season a week after his companion identifies a forgery. Well, it was a bit obvious, don't you think? He stepped back into the library, his eyes cold. I knew you would come. I just didn't know when. So I set a trap. I told Alistair I would be at the ball, but I sent my carriage with my apologies. A sudden attack of gout. I've been waiting here, in the dark, for 2 hours. I am impressed. You ride fast. Thomas, she whispered, her blood running cold. The groom. Ah, the boxer. Yes, he's indisposed. My men are quite thorough. Don't worry, he's not dead. Merely tied up in the stables. I am not a monster, Lady Serafina. I am a businessman. You are a thief and a murderer, she spat, her courage returning. My dear, he tut-tutted. Your father was a fool. He wanted to believe in impossible returns. I simply gave him what he wanted, just as Vane did. They are weak, all of them. He tucked the ledger under his arm and levelled the pistol. And now you. This is problematic. A housemaid can disappear. A poor relation can vanish. But a viscount's daughter, that requires a more permanent solution. You're going to shoot me? Good heavens, no. Not here. It's too messy. No, you and I are going to take a walk to the river. It's a tragic story. A young woman, distraught over her father's shame, throws herself into the cold, dark water. He motioned with the pistol. "After you, through the French doors." Seraphina's mind was screaming. "Alistair! He'll know. He'll come." But he wouldn't. He was at the ball. He thought she was safe. She had failed. She had failed her father. She had failed Alistair. She walked slowly toward the French doors. "It's a pity, really," Ellington said from behind her. "You have your mother's fire. She was a beautiful woman, and just as foolish." Seraphina stopped. She turned. "What did you say?" "Your mother, the late Lady Rivington. She was quite the romantic. She thought she could influence me to spare your father. It was touching and very, very naive." The implication was vile. Seraphina saw red. She didn't scream. She moved. She grabbed a heavy bronze bust of Socrates from a pedestal and hurled it, not at Ellington, but at the massive, floor-to-ceiling mirror on the opposite wall. The crash was deafening. Glass exploded. Ellington flinched, firing the pistol instinctively. The shot went wild, embedding itself in the ceiling. "You little witch!" he roared, lunging for her. The library doors burst open. It was not Thomas. It was Alistair Vane, the Duke of Ashington. He was still in his immaculate evening attire, but his face was a mask of pure, cold fury. He was not alone. Behind him were two broad-shouldered men, Bow Street runners. "Drop it, Ellington." The Duke's voice was a blade. Ellington froze. He looked at the Duke, at the officers, and he smiled. He slowly, calmly placed the pistol on the desk. He held up the Rivington ledger. "Alistair! Thank God you're here," he cried, his voice a perfect mask of relief. This woman. She broke in. She tried to steal from me. She's hysterical. She's the one who's been forging your documents, trying to frame me. I caught her red-handed." Seraphina stared, her mouth agape. The Bow Street runners looked confused. "He's lying," Seraphina shouted. "That ledger, it's proof. He framed my father." "Alistair," Ellington said, his voice oozing reason. "Think. Who has been whispering poison in your ear? This girl. She's clearly unstable, grieving. She's desperate to blame someone. She broke in here to plant, or steal, I don't know what, but she shot at me. I did not." "She's lying, Your Grace," the officer said, stepping forward. "She's clearly the intruder." Alistair Vane had not moved. He stood in the doorway, his grey eyes fixed on Ellington. He had not looked at Seraphina. "Alistair, do something," Ellington demanded. "Arrest her." The Duke was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. "It was a good plan, Ellington. Almost perfect." Ellington's smile faltered. What are you talking about?" "The ball," Alistair said, taking a step into the room. "You were right. It was a trap. But not for her. It was for you." He turned, just slightly, and Seraphina saw him. "You really thought," the Duke continued, "that I would send her? Alone? Into the dragon's den?" He looked at Seraphina, and for the first time, she saw a warmth in his eyes that made her heart stop. "I am sorry, my dear," he said, "for the deception." "What?" Seraphina whispered. "The horse. Midnight. She is fast, but she is not my fastest." Alistair turned back to Ellington. "That would be my new racing stallion, Beelzebub. I left the ball not 10 minutes after Miss Vance. I rode cross-country. I've been waiting in your stables for the last half hour, listening to your entire confession." Ellington's face went white. "And you were right about one other thing," Alistair said. "The printing error was a test, my test, to see if her instincts were as sharp as I believed." She passed. He held out his hand, not to Ellington, to Seraphina. "Lady Seraphina," he said, Would you be so kind as to give the officers the ledger you found? The one detailing the Rivington shipping venture." Ellington looked at the book in his hand. He was trapped. It's a misunderstanding," Ellington stammered. "Is it?" Alistair said. "Or is it fraud and treason? I believe the Crown will be very interested in the other ledgers in that vault, the ones detailing how you've been managing the investments of half the House of Lords." The Bow Street runners stepped forward and seized Ellington's arms. "You!" Ellington roared, his mask shattering. He lunged, not at the Duke, but at Seraphina. "This is your fault, you little—" Alistair moved. He crossed the room in 2 strides, and his fist connected with Ellington's jaw. It was a vicious, solid, and utterly definitive crack of bone. Ellington crumpled to the floor, unconscious. The ledger skittered across the polished wood and came to rest at Seraphina's feet. The Duke stood over the fallen man, breathing heavily, his knuckles bleeding. He looked down at the man who had nearly ruined him, and then he looked up at Seraphina. The coldest duke in England was gone. In his place was Alistair. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice ragged. "No," she whispered. He crossed to her, ignoring the officers. He reached out, and gently, his fingers trembling just slightly, he brushed a stray piece of glass from her hair. "It is over," he said. "It's over," she agreed, as the tears she had held back for 6 long, terrible months finally began to fall. The ride back to London was a blur. Alistair had wrapped Seraphina in his own greatcoat, mounted her on midnight, and led the horse himself, walking beside her, while his men and the captive Ellington, now awake, bound, and furious, rode ahead. They arrived at Ashington House as the dawn was breaking. The last of the carriages were pulling away. The party was over. Alistair led her inside. The grand ballroom was a wreck of guttered candles and spilled wine. "Phineas," Alistair said to his butler, "Lady Seraphina will be staying in the blue guest suite. See that she has a bath, and food, and burn this." He gestured to her torn riding habit. "Your Grace," Seraphina said, her voice hoarse. "My father—" "I have already sent a message to Newgate," Alistair said. "My lawyers are meeting the magistrate this morning. The Rivington ledger is exceptionally clear. Your father will be a free man by noon. His name will be cleared." Seraphina's knees buckled. Alistair caught her, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. He carried her up the main staircase, past the portraits of his grim-faced ancestors, and into the finest guest chamber. "Rest," he commanded. "Alistair," she whispered, her hands clutching his lapels. Ellington. He said things. About my mother." Alistair's face darkened. "He will say nothing. To anyone. Ever again. He will be transported. Australia. He will live. But he will live without his name, without his money, and without his freedom. It is a fate worse than death for a man like him." He laid her gently on a chaise lounge. "Rest, Seraphina. The light is returning." He left. She slept. 3 days later, Seraphina stood in the morning room. She was no longer Miss Vance. She was Lady Seraphina March, dressed in an elegant gown Alistair had insisted on providing. Her father, frail but with his old spark returning, was sitting by the fire, a blanket over his knees. He had been released, and Alistair had brought him here, to Ashington House, to recover. The door opened. Alistair Vane, the Duke of Ashington, entered. He was not dressed for business. He was dressed for leaving. "Your Grace," Seraphina said, moving to him. We can never repay you." "There is no debt," Alistair said. He looked at her father. "Lord Rivington, I am glad to see you looking better." "You have saved my life, Your Grace." "And my honour," her father said. You saved mine first, my lord, by raising a daughter with tenacity. Alistair's eyes found Seraphina's. You are leaving? She asked, noting the travelling coat. I am going to Ravenswood, my ancestral home. He paused. It is in need of repair, a master, and a mistress. Seraphina's heart skipped. The ton, he continued, a rare, small smile playing on his lips, is in an uproar. The fall of Lord Ellington is the only thing anyone can speak of. But they are also speaking of the mysterious Miss Vance, the one who was seen riding at midnight with a duke, the one who is now residing in his home. Let them talk, Seraphina said, lifting her chin. I intend to, Alistair said, but I would rather give them something else to talk about. He took a step closer. He was not the coldest duke. He was just a man who had looked into the abyss and been pulled back. Seraphina, he said, his voice low, Ravenswood is cold. I have been told it needs warmth. It needs light. I find I am no longer content to live in the shadows. What? What are you saying, Alistair? He reached out and took her hand. His hand was warm, not cold. His knuckles were still bruised. I am saying... She slipped toward the doors unseen, but the coldest duke in England blocked her way. Seraphina looked at him, confused. Yes? That's the story they will tell, he said. But they have the ending wrong. He didn't block her way to trap her. He blocked her way because he couldn't let her go. He raised her hand to his lips. Come with me, Seraphina. Come to Ravenswood. Help me rebuild my life, just as I helped you reclaim yours. Be my Duchess. It was not a question spoken in a glittering ballroom. It was a plea, spoken in the quiet morning light. Seraphina looked at her father, who was beaming, tears streaming down his face. She looked at Alistair, the man who was not made of granite, but of steel and fire, and a strength she had never known. They say you are the coldest duke in England, she whispered, her own tears rising. I was, he replied, his thumb brushing her cheek, until you, Lady Seraphina, set my world on fire. She didn't need to say yes. She simply rose on her toes, linked her arms around his neck, and kissed him. And for the first time in his life, Alistair Vane, the Duke of Ashington, felt truly, completely warm. And so, the coldest duke was cold no more. Seraphina didn't just find justice for her father. She found a love built not on shallow promises, but on shared danger, mutual respect, and a fire that could thaw even the most frozen heart. The ton could gossip all they wanted, but in the halls of Ravenswood, the shadows were finally banished by the light. What did you think of Seraphina's bravery and Alistair's incredible turn? It just goes to show you should never, ever judge a book or a duke by its cover. If you loved this story of drama, twists, and incredible romance, please show your support. Hit that like button so I know you're out there. Share this story with a friend who needs a good drama, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. We post new, long-form stories every single week, and you don't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for listening.